Hey everyone, Julien here, nurse practitioner for Dan Aesthetics Medical. And today I'm very happy to announce that I'm bringing on Dr. Anthony Rossi, board certified dermatologist from New York City. He is on the board of directors for the American Academy of Dermatology. He's an editor for the journal for AAD. He's board certified and he works straight out of the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And he's come out with a brand new skincare line that's getting a lot of people talking. He was in GQ magazine, a lot of other magazines recently about this unique line. So we're gonna bring him on. Hey YouTube, before we jump into the video, make sure you check out my Patreon account. It's designed for serious medical aesthetics providers just like you. So today what we're gonna do is just kind of go over some common questions about anti-aging and also skincare. We're going to talk about your line and just, a lot of common questions that I kind of get often in my practice. And I was like, who's better? Anthony's going to be answering all these questions. So I actually met you at, I think it was MCAS, I think it was in 2020. You did great, answered all my questions. We chatted a little bit since then, and then we met again at MCAS not too long ago. And we're like, man, we got to make an Instagram live happen. And I've been hearing a lot about your skincare, so
I mean, I can't believe it's been so many years since we first met at Imcast, but the industry has changed. Our field has really evolved. It's been amazing to be a part of it.
Cool. All right, man. So let's jump into it.
Yeah.
So I think the first one that I want to talk about is SPF, physical versus chemical, because up until kind of like recently, I've transitioned into a physical or a mineral-based sunscreen. And I know that almost every single derm that I hear or see, they always request physical sunscreen. So first of all, what do you recommend and what's your take and the reason for it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it's something I hear, every day from patients. I do Mohs surgery as well as cosmetics and aesthetics. So, that skin cancer patient and our cosmetics patients always want to know, how do we protect our skin from extrinsic photoaging? And that's the aging that's associated with the UV exposure, both UVA and UVB. So really, as a dermatologist, I always say, I just want you to wear sunblock.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, which one? There's so many on the market, which is a great question. So then we separated out between physical and chemical sunscreens. And when we mean physical, it really means a mineral compound. So zinc or titanium dioxide. So zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. And when you say those words, people always say, oh, I remember, lifeguards with like the white strip on their nose, and I don't want to look chalky. And so, I really say that has evolved. So those physical sunblocks really have evolved. They become micronized, so they're thinner, they're more sheer, and those are the ones we want to look for. I do recommend physical over chemical, and I'll tell you why, but in reality, we just want people to wear sunblock. But the reason why many people suggest physical sunblocks is because they mainly sit on top of the skin and reflect the UV. Whereas chemical sunscreens, they sit on the skin, but they absorb it and then they sort of dissipate it. And so chemical sunscreens can be a little bit more sensitizing for people, and they can sort of irritate. Some people are allergic to those compounds. And it's not everyone, so you really have to go by who you are and try the different ones. But some of them can be a little bit irritating. Also, it's interesting, in the States, our FDA has put out sort of a comment about sunscreens. And they denotated the physical sunscreens as being completely safe. Whereas the chemical ones, they're saying that they're looking more into it. They're not saying they're bad, but they're saying they're asking for more data, because some of these chemical sunscreens we know in the lab can actually be endocrine disruptors or sort of interfere with the hormonal functioning. And that's really been shown in animal studies and less human studies. But to be completely safe, I usually recommend the physical.
I heard a couple studies saying that basically chemical sunscreens, some of them have been known to cross the blood-borne barrier and potentially introduce that into the system. If you're doing that regularly, it can cause some potential harm. Is this something that is legit, or?
Yeah, and I think that's why the FDA wanted to look more into it. We don't see that in human studies, and it doesn't play out in, daily life. We haven't seen, people come in complaining of that. But because these chemicals are known endocrine disruptors and they can be absorbed, that's why people are looking into that and asking for more studies on it. Of course, they're still there and they still are effective sunscreens, and we want people to use them. So if that's their preferred sunscreen, we're okay with that. And I just want people to wear sunscreen in general to protect themselves, because the harm of getting constant UV exposure and potential skin cancer outweighs what we know so far.
Yeah, you're right. It took me a while to transition into the mineral base, because before I used to wear it, I used to have this white cast. I didn't like it. And in the summer, I kind of feel like it was heavier or whatever. But it's changed a lot now. And I saw that you've got a great one. So you're coming out with Rossi MD. Is that it?
Yeah.
It's Rossi MD. And I've heard good things about your mineral-based sunscreen.
Yeah. So this is it. It's part of the whole line. But I really wanted to create a sunscreen that I would wear every day. And for me, that's something that goes on completely sheer, because like I don't want this white cast, but I also want that broad spectrum. That's what people need to look for. Broad spectrum, it covers UVA and UVB. And the SPF, when we talk about SPF, that's a sun protective factor against UVB. And what you'll see now coming out in other sunscreens, especially overseas, like in Asia and Europe, there's going to be a mark called PA+++, and those pluses can vary. And that is a measure of protection against UVA. So you want to look for both of those, both SPF, that's going to denote how much SPF is in there and what protection factor against UVB there is. But then we also want to look at UVA. And if there's something that says broad spectrum, then you know it's covering both UVA and UVB. For me, I micronize this particle very small, this titanium dioxide particle, so it doesn't give you that white cast. And what's also in there, and you'll see this again coming up in more sunscreens, what I did is not only did we mix it with moisturizers to help you moisturize the epidermis itself, but also niacinamide, which is a potent antioxidant. And so that can help with some reactive oxygen species, which we know, are effective against environmental pollutants and environmental aggressors. We're all walking around every day. We're exposed to carcinogens, in the air. So it's not just the UV that we know causes photoaging, but some of these reactive oxygen species can do that as well.
For anyone out there who isn't aware, like Dr. Rossi's skincare is not just like another skincare line. It's actually a lot of research went into this. He was speaking about it at MCAS recently. It's a novel approach. One thing that really stood out was your discussion about inflammaging.
Yeah.
And tell me what the heck is inflammaging, and tell me how we can reduce that.
Yeah, I think you and I probably see it every day, right? Like we're seeing all these patients come in, their skin might be sort of irritated, inflamed. Many people just think they have rosacea constantly, but it could be things that they're actually putting on their skin or getting exposed to from the environment that's really causing this low level of inflammation. So whether it's something like an allergen that's irritating you or just an irritant contact dermatitis, we're getting this level of inflammation. And this body of research is going on not just in skin, but also, inside of our body. That inflammation can lead to sort of like this aging process, right? It's the wear and tear that's happening on our skin, on the collagen that's in our dermis, and just this chronic idea of inflammation and sort of the cascade that happens after that with our immune system can really contribute to this aging process. So I'm really super interested in this area of research, not just for the skin, but also how we're sort of aging internally in our body.
You were talking about it at MCAS, one of your lines. Do you want to discuss that and how it decreases inflammation or anything else?
Yeah, sure. So the peptide that's in this line, actually, so peptides are a bit different than what people think of as retinol. Retinol as a vitamin A derivative, and we know and love that compound because it helps with photoaging. But a lot of people can't tolerate retinol or retinoids. So this line is completely peptide based, and it actually is based off of a peptide that's derived from a sea anemone, which targets a receptor in our skin called TRPV1. And TRPV1 has been discovered by brilliant scientists, many years ago. They actually won the Nobel Prize for this, and it's located throughout our cells, but in the skin, it actually mediates skin sensitivity, inflammation, and then aging in itself through cleaving the collagen that's in our skin. So by targeting that receptor and blocking it, we can actually help decrease sensitivity and decrease this inflammation that's happening in the skin.
Amazing. Which product do you have that reduces that?
It's weaved throughout the whole line, and really the serum, the solution, which is an essence that contains lactic acid, which is good for exfoliation, which I know we may touch on, and then the overnight cream, which is super important not only to hydrate, but really, as we sleep, all of our biological processes are just sort of regenerating. And that's what we want in our skin too. We want to hydrate it, but we'd also want to decrease that baseline inflammation.
Okay, so when we're looking at peptides and creams, sometimes we hear these things such as peptide is just another word for collagen, and collagen topically doesn't penetrate the skin because it's too large. Is there new updates in technology? How does this work?
Well, the skin does a great job at doing what it's supposed to do, which is keeping things out, right?
Yeah.
So, but if the molecule is small enough, it can actually penetrate into the skin. And so there are some that can actually get through the top layer of the skin, the stratum corneum that sits on top of the epidermis. And so it's helpful to know, which molecules will penetrate and which won't. Many times things like vitamin C may not even penetrate your skin, but because it sits on top of it, it can still act as a topical antioxidant. So it's not so much that it's actually penetrating through, but actually working as a topical antioxidant. So there's a lot of misconceptions on, things like vitamin C, like what does it actually do? Most of the time it just sits on top of the skin. Very little would actually penetrate through it.
So when it comes to vitamin C, is it necessary to have a vitamin C that, needs to be kind of like mixed right away? What do you look for in a vitamin C?
You definitely can't expose ascorbic acid, which is the vitamin C, to light because it will oxidize. So you want to make sure that that package is opaque, or it's not. If it's clear, it's going to oxidize. So when you put it on your skin, there is some oxidation that's happening, but it can still be active for a period of time. Yeah. So that's when things like expiration dates really do come in handy, right? So some people, say, oh, these things don't really expire, but when there's actives in there, they do expire. So you want to make sure that you are using your products in a timely manner, because after a while, they will degrade.
So before we go, just tell me, what's your favorite product on your skin line?
Honestly, I'm in love with all of them, of course, but I do love my eye emulsion. I think it's one of a kind. It's unique. With the peptide, it's really targeting those signs of aging. I actually did clinical studies on these, and we showed in 4 weeks the reduction of not only signs of aging like fine lines and rhytids, but also signs of irritation like redness. So I encourage everyone to go to the website, Dr. Rossi Derm MD, and you'll see all the clinicals and before and afters. And of course, the sunscreen is near and dear to my heart because it took a long time to make. Those are interesting compounds.
Thank you so much, man. So what I'll do is I'm going to post this. What I'll do is I'll post the link to your website, and then therefore you guys can check it out if you want, and check out his...
And I love following you. I love seeing all your content. Please keep it going.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I'll keep the dances going. Okay, take care, man.
Hope to
Great seeing
you soon.
Enjoy your evening.
Thanks.